every single day, there seems to be more corruption, more conflict, and more scandal with arguably the most rotten and corrupt government in modern Canadian history, if not Canadian history. We have a prime minister who, unlike any prime minister in Canadian history, has been found guilty not once, but twice of breaking Canada's ethics laws. He was found guilty of being in conflicts of interest. And so, given that leadership starts at the top and the culture of a government starts at the top, it's no wonder that we have seen the kind of rot and corruption that has permeated throughout this entire Liberal government. And we now know that carbon tax Carney has become conflict Carney when the Prime Minister shamelessly appointed his rich pal Carney to serve as the so-called chair of the Liberal Party's task force on economic growth. This is very convenient for the Prime Minister to appoint Mr. Carney chair of the Liberal Party's task force when in fact he essentially is advising the Prime Minister on matters of economic policy, and that is to avoid Mr. Carney being subject to the Conflict of Interest Act and to avoid having to make disclosures pursuant to that act with respect to his many conflicts. Now, what are some of those conflicts? Well, every day we seem to learn of new conflicts. And by the way, the title is Chair of the Liberal Party's Task Force. Guess what? We found out that it is a one-person task force, namely Carbon Tax Carney, also known as Conflict Carney. And speaking of those conflicts, almost immediately following his appointment as the Prime Minister's advisor, evidently the Prime Minister's lost confidence in his utterly incompetent finance minister, Chrystia Freeland, and we find out that the government raises the threshold for insured mortgages from $1 million to $1.5 million. Now, what is the significance of that? Well, it just so happens that Carbon Tax Carney, also known as Conflict of Interest Carney, is the chair of none other than Brookfield. Now, what is Brookfield? It is a multinational investment management company that owns Sagen, the second largest mortgage insurer. So think about that. You have an advisor to the Prime Minister on economic policy who then, upon his appointment, the government just out of coincidence raises the threshold for insured mortgages, and that advisor just happens to be the chair of Brookfield, the owner of the second largest mortgage insurer. And of course, it resulted in Brookfield benefiting richly from that decision. In fact, their stock hit a 6-month high.
How convenient.
How convenient.